My boss Marcus looked me in the eye and told me I was being transferred across the country, while my pregnant wife was home remodeling our house. I had no choice but to take severance. 3 months later, I discovered the truth. He'd given my job to his mistress and had been embezzling from my budget. Most people would have reported him to HR. I didn't. Instead, I became a Swiss executive recruiter, sent him to Europe on his own dime, and watched him destroy his own career while I documented every step. This is that story. If you've ever been betrayed by someone in power and dreamed of the perfect revenge, you need to hear this. Hit subscribe, drop a like, and comment what you would have done in my position. Because what you're about to hear is a masterclass in patience, planning, and letting karma do the heavy lifting. Let's dive in. This happened in the 1990s, but I remember every detail like it was yesterday. Some betrayals don't fade. They calcify. They turn into something cold and sharp in your chest, waiting for exactly the right moment to cut back. I was 32 years old, a regional sales manager for a major consumer products company, the kind of brand you'd recognize instantly if I could name it. I managed 11 western states: California, Oregon, Washington, Nevada, Arizona, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Utah, and New Mexico. Millions of consumers, hundreds of retail accounts, tens of millions in annual revenue flowing through territories I'd built and maintained. While division headquarters operated out of Chicago, I worked remotely from my home office on the West Coast. In the early 90s, working from home meant you were either extraordinarily trusted or extraordinarily isolated. There was no Zoom, no Slack, no Teams, just phone calls, fax machines, and FedEx packets. Communication took effort. Trust was essential. And I'd earned that trust. I wasn't just good at my job, I was exceptional. I hit quota every single quarter, often exceeding targets by 15 to 20%. I managed my budget like it was my own money, staying under allocation while driving consistent growth. But what really set me apart was my reputation as a turnaround specialist. When regions were hemorrhaging money, losing market share, or collapsing under incompetent management, corporate would send me in. I'd done it 4 times: Denver, Phoenix, Portland, Seattle. Each time, I'd show up, assess the damage, rebuild relationships with retailers, restructure operations, and turn failing territories into profitable ones. I was the guy who made things work, the kind of employee companies claim they value but secretly resent, because consistent excellence makes everyone else look mediocre by comparison. My boss, let's call him Marcus, was everything I wasn't. He was a corporate lifer who'd climbed the ladder through political maneuvering rather than actual competence. Not incompetent exactly, just strategically mediocre. He knew how to manage up better than manage down. The executives loved him because he never caused problems, never challenged decisions, never rocked the boat. Marcus was in his late 40s, always in expensive suits, always name-dropping about dinner with VPs and golf games with directors. He took credit for wins that happened in spite of him and deflected blame for losses that were clearly his fault. I'd watched him do it countless times, but he was my boss. And in corporate America, your boss controls everything: your reviews, your raises, your trajectory. So I played the game. I delivered results, made him look good, and kept my head down. Everything was running smoothly until late September. We had something called Market Development Funds, MDF, essentially a discretionary budget for marketing initiatives, product demonstrations, promotional events, retail displays, anything that moved product and built brand awareness. The rules were simple: get manager approval, submit receipts, and the funds were allocated to your annual MDF budget. My MDF budget was $200,000 for the year. Spread across 11 states and 12 months, it required strategic allocation. I was meticulous. Spreadsheets updated weekly, every receipt filed, every dollar tracked against ROI. Then the packets started arriving. Weekly FedEx envelopes from headquarters, thick with paperwork, budget reports, sales data, expense approvals, the usual corporate bureaucracy. The kind of documentation you'd flip through late at night, half watching TV, signing your name and moving on. But I actually read what I signed. One night, I found something that stopped me cold. Payment authorizations for a company called Premier Demo Services. Multiple invoices, thousands of dollars each, all charged to my MDF account. I'd never heard of Premier Demo Services, never contracted with them, never authorized any demonstrations. I pulled my vendor files, checked my records. Nothing. These invoices were for services I'd never requested, in markets where I had no activity, on dates when I had other programs running. But every invoice had been pre-approved by Marcus and routed to me for final sign-off, as if I'd requested these services and he'd simply approved my request. I called him. It was close to 8 p.m. my time, 10 in Chicago, but Marcus often worked late. Marcus, hey, got a question about some invoices. There's a demo company here, Premier Demo Services. I don't have any record of working with them. A pause, just a beat. Noticeable but deniable. Oh, don't worry about those. I'm sorry? Those charges are fine. Just sign off and send the packet back. I waited for more, an explanation, context, something. Nothing came. But I've never worked with this vendor. I don't have contracts or agreements. I don't know what demos they supposedly did. I said don't worry about it. His tone shifted, acquiring an edge. The edge that says this conversation is over. The charges are assigned to your MDF account. Everything's been approved. Just needs your signature. Marcus, this is almost $30,000. And it's well within your annual budget. This is internal accounting stuff. It's been reviewed at my level. Your signature is just a formality. There was something in his voice, not quite threatening, but close enough to make the message clear. This wasn't a discussion. This was an instruction. When your boss, the person who controls your career, tells you something is fine, you want to believe him. You need to believe him, because the alternative is too complicated, too risky, too career-threatening. I looked at the invoices again. Marcus's signature already on them, official letterhead, accounting stamps. Okay, I said finally. If you've approved these, I'll sign off. Thanks. Talk soon. He hung up. I sat there holding the phone, that feeling of wrongness growing stronger. But I pushed it down. Told myself Marcus must have some broader view I wasn't aware of. Told myself this was probably some corporate initiative he couldn't fully explain. So I signed the forms, sent them back to Chicago. That trust destroyed everything. The packets kept coming. Every 2 weeks. More invoices from Premier Demo Services. Sometimes $3,000. Sometimes $15,000. Always pre-approved by Marcus. Always assigned to my budget. By December, Premier Demo Services had billed $75,000 to my account. More than a third of my annual budget. For services I'd never seen, never requested, never been informed about. But my overall numbers still looked good. My territory hit quota. Sales were up year over year. Even with the mysterious charges, I'd stayed under total budget because I'd been so careful with everything else. I submitted my year-end reports in January, expecting positive feedback, maybe even a bonus. Instead, I got a phone call. It was a Tuesday morning. My wife and I had just learned we were having a boy. She was 12 weeks pregnant. We were euphoric and terrified and making plans for the future. "This is Sarah from Executive Administration. Marcus would like you to come to headquarters for a meeting." "Sure, when?" "This week, Thursday if possible." I checked my calendar. "Thursday's tight. I have a buyer presentation. What's the meeting about?" "An executive review session. Marcus will brief you when you arrive. Can you make Thursday?" Something in her careful neutrality made my stomach drop. "Yeah, I can make Thursday work." "Perfect. Flight information will be emailed within the hour." She hung up before I could ask anything else. I flew to Chicago Wednesday night. Showed up Thursday morning in my best suit, because when you're uncertain about a meeting, you dress for the worst-case scenario. Sarah met me in the lobby, led me to a conference room on the executive floor. Not my usual meeting space. A formal room with expensive furniture and that particular corporate smell of leather and air conditioning. 3 people were waiting. Marcus, sitting at the head of the table. Perfectly pressed suit. Expression carefully neutral. Janet, the division HR director. I'd met her once 2 years ago for maybe 5 minutes. And Robert Chen, a VP I'd met twice in my entire career. Both times briefly. The presence of HR and a VP meant this wasn't a performance review. This was an execution. "Have a seat," Marcus said. I sat. The leather was cold. Robert opened a folder. "We appreciate you coming on short notice. We're making some organizational changes and wanted to discuss them with you in person." Organizational changes is corporate speak for, "You're not going to like this." "We're restructuring several territories," Robert continued, "and we'd like to transfer you to a different market. Based on your turnaround track record, we think you're ideal for this." He slid a folder across the table. I opened it. Southeast region. Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana. Markets I'd never worked. Products I had minimal experience with. Retail partnerships I'd have to build from scratch. And the kicker, immediate relocation required. "This is a significant opportunity," Robert said. "High visibility, direct reporting to division leadership. We're moving key resources into this region." Everything he said might have been technically true, but the subtext was clear. This was a demotion disguised as an opportunity. They were moving me as far from my successful territory as possible, into a situation where I'd have no relationships, no advantages, no support. "When would this happen?" I asked. "We'd want you in Atlanta by March 1st. That gives you about 5 weeks. 5 weeks. My wife was pregnant. We were mid-renovation. Contractors already scheduled. Kitchen gutted. Deposits paid. Drywall exposed. "I need to be honest," I said carefully. "My wife is pregnant. We're in the middle of a major renovation. Relocating right now would be extremely difficult." Janet spoke for the first time, her voice full of practiced sympathy. "We understand this is challenging timing. If relocation isn't feasible, you have 2 options. Apply for other positions within the company that don't require relocation, or accept a severance package." There it was. Take this impossible reassignment, or leave. I looked at Marcus. He wouldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew for certain. This wasn't about restructuring. This was about removing me, specifically, deliberately. "Can I ask why I'm being moved? My territory's performing well. I hit all my targets. I'm under budget." "It's not about performance," Robert said quickly. Too quickly. "This is strategic realignment." "But you're replacing me?" A pause, just long enough to be damning. "The territory will be reassigned, yes. To who? Those details are still being finalized. They already knew. I could see it, in how Janet shifted, in how Marcus's jaw tightened. I should have fought, demanded explanations, refused. But I was tired, and I was thinking about my wife, about the baby coming, about the reality that fighting this would mean months of conflict, with no guarantee of winning. I need to discuss this with my wife, I said. Of course. We'll need an answer by Monday. I flew home that night. My wife and I stayed up until 2 a.m. running scenarios, trying to find a path that didn't feel like defeat. There wasn't one. Monday morning, I called Janet in HR. I'll take the severance. I'm sorry it didn't work out, she said. Maybe she even meant it. 2 weeks later, I was unemployed. For 3 months, I focused on being present. My wife, preparing for our son, finishing the renovation. I interviewed for positions, but nothing felt right. I told myself I was being selective. In reality, I was adrift. I'd spent years building my career, and in one meeting, it had been vaporized. I tried to make peace with it. Sometimes companies make decisions that don't make sense. Sometimes, you're just in the wrong place at the wrong time. I almost convinced myself. Then in April, Tom called, a former colleague who'd left the company 6 months earlier. Hey, I've been meaning to reach out. How are things? Getting by, job hunting, you know. Yeah, I heard you left. Sorry about that. You got screwed. What do you mean? You don't know? Know what? About your territory. About who replaced you. My hand tightened on the phone. Who replaced me? Woman named Jennifer Holbrook. You know her? I searched my memory. No, never heard of her. Yeah, well, she's running your old region now. And it's a disaster. She's missing quotas by massive margins, losing accounts. Buyers hate her. It's become this internal cautionary tale. How did someone so unqualified end up in such a critical role? That made no sense. My territory had been strong. There was no reason to replace a proven performer with someone incompetent, unless competence wasn't the point. Tom, why are you telling me this? A pause. Because I think you got pushed out for reasons that had nothing to do with performance. And I think you deserve to know. After we hung up, I started making calls. Vendors I'd worked with, retail buyers, other regional managers. Carefully, casually, just checking in. The picture that emerged was damning. Jennifer Holbrook had no experience in our industry. She'd been hired 6 months before I was forced out, as a junior marketing coordinator. No sales experience, no retail relationships, no territory management background. Yet she'd been promoted directly into a senior regional position, overseeing 11 states and millions in revenue. It made no sense. Until a buyer in Portland told me, yeah, Jennifer, she's Marcus's assistant now, basically. I've seen them together at trade shows. Very close, if you know what I mean. I knew what he meant. I dug deeper, called in favors, asked questions that seemed innocent but weren't. Marcus was having an affair with Jennifer Holbrook. He'd hired her as a coordinator. Their relationship developed. When he wanted to promote her into a significant role, one that would give her status and money, he needed to create an opening. My opening. But there was more. I'd saved all my paperwork, every invoice, every report, every piece of documentation, including those Premier Demo Services invoices. I spent a week tracing the company, business registrations, tax filings, corporate ownership records. This was pre-internet, which meant calls to state agencies, public records requests, navigating bureaucratic systems. What I found made my blood boil. Premier Demo Services was registered to a holding company. That holding company had 3 partners listed. One was Marcus. One was his brother-in-law. The third was Jennifer's uncle. Marcus had created a fake vendor, billed my budget, and probably others, for services never performed. Pocketed the money. Used my signature to legitimize it. Embezzlement. Fraud. And when I'd gotten too close to noticing, he'd forced me out and replaced me with his mistress. I sat in my office at 2 a.m., surrounded by documents, and felt something shift inside me. Not rage. Rage is hot and impulsive. This was cold, calculating. The feeling you get when you stop being a victim and start being a strategist. Most people would go to corporate HR, file complaints, try to get their job back. But I knew that story. I'd be dismissed as a disgruntled former employee. Marcus would deny everything. Jennifer would back him up. The company would close ranks, conduct an investigation that found nothing, and I'd look bitter while they kept their jobs. No, if I was going to take him down, it had to be perfect, untraceable. I had to make him destroy himself, and I knew exactly how. I spent 2 weeks planning, not acting, planning, thinking through every angle, every variable, every way this could fail. The foundation rested on one insight. Marcus's greatest weakness was his ambition. He'd spent his career clawing through middle management, always looking for the next promotion. He wanted to be a real executive. Corner office, 6-figure bonuses, prestige. And like most ambitious mediocrities, he was deeply insecure about his limitations. That made him susceptible to flattery, to opportunities that seemed designed specifically for him. That was my opening. I had to become someone he'd want to impress, someone offering what he'd always wanted. I had to become a headhunter. Earlier in my career, I'd worked with elite executive recruiting firms, the kind that place C-suite leaders, not mid-level managers. I'd seen how they operated, how they built intrigue, how they made candidates feel specially selected for opportunities most people would never hear about. I could replicate that. I created a fictional identity. Richard Caldwell, senior partner at Whitmore & Associates Executive Search. I spent $200 on business cards, expensive stock, embossed lettering, professional design. Set up a dedicated phone line with professional voicemail. Created letterhead and had it professionally printed. Whitmore & Associates was deliberately generic. It sounded established, but wasn't easily searchable in 1990s internet infrastructure. If Marcus tried to verify, he'd find it plausible that a boutique search firm might not have major web presence. Then I studied Marcus, really studied him. 3 things emerged. 1, he loved golf, obsessed with it. Professional tournaments, courses he'd played, constantly talking about it. 2, he romanticized European business culture. He'd done 1 international trip, London for a trade show, and never stopped talking about how sophisticated European companies were. 3, he desperately wanted to work in luxury goods. Our consumer products company was successful, but unglamorous. Marcus would make comments about how he should have gone into luxury brands. So I engineered the perfect bait. A Swiss luxury watch company with ties to professional golf sponsorships, seeking an American executive to lead North American expansion. Beautiful in its specificity. Every detail designed for Marcus's particular ambitions and insecurities. I practiced the pitch 100 times, in front of mirrors, recording myself, refining the language until it sounded natural, professional, believable. Then on a Tuesday morning in late May, I called him. "Good morning, Mr. Marcus. My name is Richard Caldwell, senior partner with Whitmore & Associates Executive Search. I apologize for the cold call, but your name came up through our network. Do you have a few minutes to speak confidentially?" I could hear him sit straighter. "Sure. What's this regarding?" We're conducting a very selective search for a client. I can't disclose the name yet, but it's a prestigious European luxury brand in Swiss watchmaking. They're establishing significant North American operations and need an executive to build and lead the division. Your background in consumer products came up during our research. Hook set. Can you tell me more about the role? Of course, Executive Vice President of North American Operations, direct reporting to the European Board, everything from market development to retail partnerships to brand positioning. The company has significant sponsorship relationships with professional golf, which I understand is a personal interest. I could hear the excitement he tried to hide. That's fascinating. What's the timeline? We're moving relatively quickly. The company wants someone in place by fall. We're in preliminary screening, identifying candidates, conducting conversations, narrowing the field. If there's mutual interest, we'd move to formal interviews, including meetings with the European Board. In Europe? Yes. Final. Selection would require travel to Zurich. All expenses covered, of course. Zurich, European Board, Executive Vice President, golf sponsorships, every word calibrated to his desires. This sounds incredible, Marcus said. I'd definitely be interested. Excellent. Let me send preliminary materials, non-disclosure agreement, company background, role specifications. Can I get your personal email? I want to keep this confidential given your current position. He gave it without hesitation. Perfect. You'll have materials by end of day. Review everything and we'll schedule a follow-up next week. And Marcus, confidentiality is paramount. The client is very sensitive about their expansion plans becoming public. Of course, I understand completely. Excellent. Talk soon. I hung up and allowed myself one moment of satisfaction. He'd taken the bait. Over 3 weeks, I built the illusion meticulously. Professional information packets, fictional client profiles with enough detail to feel legitimate, but vague enough to prevent verification. Follow-up calls discussing his background, aspirations, vision for the role. I was patient, never pushing too hard, always letting him feel like he was pursuing this, not being manipulated. During our third call, I raised the stakes. Marcus, I want to be transparent. You're one of 3 finalists. The European Board wants to meet all candidates in person, in Zurich, for final interviews. When? I'd already researched the company calendar. Mandatory quarterly meetings were scheduled for late July. Every division director had to attend. The board is available the week of July 22nd. I know that's short notice, but it's the only window before their final decision. If you can't commit, no, I can make it work. Absolutely. Perfect. Over the next month, I orchestrated every detail. Confirmed his travel dates, arriving Thursday, final meeting Monday. I didn't book his hotel or flights. I told him to use his personal credit card for expense reimbursement processing, and that all costs would be reimbursed by the client company. He paid for everything himself. The flight, the 5-star Zurich hotel, the expensive meals. While Marcus was packing his bags, I made another call. To his boss, the division president. Hi, this is Richard Caldwell from Whitmore and Associates Executive Search. I'm calling to verify a reference from Marcus. He's a finalist for an executive position with our client. Oh, let me transfer you to HR. Perfect. HR picked up. I went through the same professional script. Then, as if it were the most natural thing. I believe he's currently in Europe finalizing arrangements. He mentioned he'd already given notice. Silence. Then, I'm sorry, what? Oh, perhaps I misunderstood. He indicated he'd be transitioning out. My apologies if I've gotten ahead of myself. I hung up and waited. Marcus flew to Zurich on Thursday, checked into his hotel, sent me an email confirming arrival. I responded saying the board was dealing with unexpected issues. The Monday meeting would be delayed. Enjoy the weekend. We'd be in touch. He went sightseeing, posted on social media about beautiful Swiss Alps, had expensive dinners. Meanwhile, in Chicago, hell broke loose. The division president went to HR. They checked records. No resignation on file. They tried calling Marcus. Voicemail. They sent faxes to the hotel. No response. He was in Europe, unreachable, while mandatory meetings happened without him. By Monday, his absence was impossible to explain. Marcus stayed in Europe an extra day or two. When he finally flew home Tuesday night, he probably felt important. Courted by European executives, on the cusp of something big. He drove to the office Wednesday morning. His keycard didn't work. He tried the front desk. They made a call. HR came down. They asked him to follow them to a conference room. His belongings were already there, boxed up. They asked for his laptop, phone, building access, handed him a severance agreement. His employment was terminated immediately. I heard he tried to explain that there was a misunderstanding, that he'd never resigned, that he'd been recruited, but hadn't accepted anything. None of it mattered. He'd abandoned his post during critical meetings to fly to Europe for a job interview. That alone was grounds for termination. And once they started digging, looking into why he might be job hunting, they found the invoices, the fake company, the payments. Jennifer was fired within the week for misuse of funds. His wife left him shortly after. When your husband gets fired for embezzlement and it comes out, he'd hired his girlfriend with company money. Divorce papers follow quickly. Marcus never worked in the industry again. His name was Poison. The beautiful irony? He destroyed himself. All I did was give him the opportunity. I didn't get my job back. I didn't want it. By then, I'd moved on, found better opportunities, built a life beyond that company. But knowing he faced real, permanent, career-ending consequences for what he'd done, that was worth more than any job. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes, the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just giving someone enough rope and watching them hang themselves. Justice doesn't always come from the system. Sometimes it comes from patience, precision, and a willingness to let karma do the heavy lifting. Marcus wanted to destroy my career to advance his own. Instead, his ambition, his arrogance, his absolute certainty that he was untouchable, that destroyed him. And I got to watch every step. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe. Drop a comment and tell me, would you have reported him to HR, or would you have gone the creative route? What's the most satisfying comeuppance you've ever witnessed? Share your story below. And remember, sometimes the best revenge is just giving people exactly what they ask for. Until next time,